Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. So the day has finally come. I have finally acquired this Albertosaurus. If you happen to have been watching in the community section of this channel for quite a while, you'll know that I have been relentlessly searching for this Albertosaurus figure, trying to get many people to help me get a hold of it, and I was having a pretty darn hard time finding it because, again, it was very limited as far as its release goes. Well, it recently showed up in Canada, and my good buddy Kevin from Canada helped me to acquire this and picked it up from Walmart.com, sent it my way. So a huge thank you goes out to him for helping me acquire one of my most wanted figures from this Jurassic line from Mattel, and definitely a really hard figure to get a hold of. So again, a gigantic thank you goes out to him for helping me get a hold of this figure. As far as the box goes, we have your standard Battle Damage box art here as far as the Jurassic World line goes, and on the back you have a really nice image of the Albertosaurus itself, as well as an image displaying the battle damage feature, and then a few figures down here, some of the other battle damage figures that are in the line that is currently out at the same time as this, but also not in the United States. For some reason, we just got skipped completely on all of these battle damage figures in every way. But again, I am really happy now to have this figure. So let's go ahead and break it out of its box and take a look at it. So here is our absolutely gorgeous looking newer version of the Albertosaurus, and I think I really wanted to get a hold of this one because I think the whole paint scheme on this is so much more striking than the older version. The older version looked great as far as the sculpt, and of course this is just a completely reused sculpt, just a total repaint, but I felt like the paint scheme was decent. It just wasn't anything amazing. This paint scheme also isn't really anything amazing, but I think it just generally is a lot more appealing to look at and a lot nicer look. I like this light blue color that they have for it and that kind of striping effect down the face. It's just all so super striking to me and very, very nice looking. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at this figure right now. So, like I had stated, we have reviewed the sculpt before. We don't need to look at the sculpt again, just what is new with the figure, and that is just the coloration. And that is pretty much what we see up here in the face is the main area, actually, of color on this figure in comparison to the previous version. We have a very nice light blue for the majority of the body, and I actually really quite like that light blue. And then you have a kind of a squiggly yellow line type of a design that runs down the body. You can see it runs up into the eye area, and the eye is an ever so slightly different shade of that yellow. Well, actually not that yellow, but of yellow, there we go, with a nice black pupil, but it is definitely a little bit of a different shade of color in comparison to the kind of squiggles that run down the body, and we can see it runs down right here, and then a little bit right here, and then also a little up here on that Albertosaurus crest area, but then it stops dead, and then we have no other coloration on the body at all, aside from, of course, some of the wounds of the figure. If we take a look at the opposing side here, you can see again that the eye placement looks pretty decent for the most part, and we have actually a little bit of difference in the coloration. You can see that this definitely looks a little bit different over here in comparison to the way it looks on this side. So that's pretty cool to see some difference in that aspect, but again, it looks really quite nice and very striking if you ask me. Once we open the mouth, you can see that the inside of the mouth sports that beautifully textured tongue, just like the last Albertosaurus did, a beautiful pinkish coloration in there with a very nice gloss coat, making it look very realistic as far as the saliva type of a look. All the teeth look really nicely painted as well, except for a little bit of sloppiness up here. But aside from that area, for the most part, they all look really nice and definitely quite beautiful overall as far as the inside of the mouth goes. The jaw is actually really stiff. The neck, for some reason, moves really smoothly. It does not take much effort to move that neck at all. The jaw, however, is very, very stiff. The legs also very loose and move very easily, like especially this one's almost wobbly. And the tail is extremely stiff and almost pretty darn hard to move. So it's very strange how this figure is as far as its articulation goes. But one thing that is cool is we do have some painted nails down here on the feet as well. We have some nicely painted nails with a dark gray and a nice gloss coat applied. And you can also see kind of like a speckling to the Albertosaurus as far as like a dark, sort of a black speckling. And you do see that throughout most of the body. Like Mattel does tend to usually include that kind of speckled type of a look to their figures. Some of them tend to miss out on it, but most of them seem to have it. And then we have this area where there's two slits on the leg, so it has been attacked by something at some point. It is painted with a reddish coloration and given a very nice gloss coat to add a bit of realism to that open wound. And then we have the battle damage, which we push that open, and actually this is supposed to be down. So there we go. We now have the rib cage down. You can now see the rib cage, and if you push it again, now the rib cage goes up and we see the inside of the dinosaur. So I do actually really like this kind of battle damage feature that is on this Albertosaurus. Definitely a really cool, very unique battle damage look for this figure. A really cool gimmick that they've given it, and it works quite beautifully overall. But again, as far as everything else goes, it's all the same as far as the sculpt in comparison to the previous Albertosaurus, but just a really cool new beautiful looking paint scheme. And if you don't happen to have the previous Albertosaurus, I will give you a length on this one. For a length, you're looking at about the 13-inch range, or about 33 centimeters, maybe a little bit more. And then for a height, when it's standing at a comfortable position, you will see it at about 6¼ inches, or about 15½ centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Albertosaurus. And you can see that the Albertosaurus does sport some very nice size to it. It is a really big figure, and definitely a really striking and impressive size to this Albertosaurus overall. Exactly the same size as the previous one, but definitely, again, a really nicely sized figure. So as far as this newest version of the Mattel Jurassic World Albertosaurus goes, the Battle Damaged Albertosaurus, which hopefully will get a non-battle damaged version at some point too, but it is really, really nicely done. Absolutely gorgeous sculpt. I stated this in my very first review, and I will always state that I love the sculpt on this Albertosaurus. It is just beautiful in every way, very highly detailed, and just jam-packed with beautiful sculpt overall. The paint application, of course, is the newest aspect to the figure and what we came here to look at, and that is also really nice. And again, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like it's a much nicer appearance than the previous one, which the previous one was nice, but this one is just a really striking and overall a very beautiful look. I feel like the older one, being like a darker paint scheme, is more of like a female. This one may be more of a male with a brighter, more vibrant paint scheme, and I love the way that that kind of yellow plays off of the blue. It's like a bluish gray sort of. It's just very, very nicely done. And then we have that white lower jaw, which runs down into the throat. And I actually think I forgot to kind of mention that lower jaw color for some reason when I was talking about what was new with the color. But again, the white lower jaw that runs down into the throat, and then you have that very nice bluish gray, and then those beautiful yellow stripes that run down the neck. And again, I really think the entire thing just looks super striking and really, really beautiful overall. It's nothing crazy or major. There's not even that much paint application involved with the figure. But again, I think what is included is absolutely gorgeous, and this is definitely my favorite version of the Albertosaurus. Keep our fingers crossed that maybe we'll get a non-battle damaged version of it at some point, because I really do like the sculpt, so I wouldn't mind another version of this figure again at some point. As far as picking this up, your best bet is probably to make friends with someone in Canada if you live in the United States, because here in the States we did not get this figure. No word yet on if we will. There's probably a chance it might show up at some point, but I can't say for sure, as once again, it seems like Walmart has restocked the Jurassic section and excluded the battle damage area, and in fact they recently kind of clearanced all the battle damage figures out, which is an even more disheartening sign that the battle damage figures are now gone from United States and Walmart in general here in the United States. But regardless, this figure is really beautiful, and if you can get a hold of it, it's definitely worth the hunt and the purchase. So make sure that you do try to find a way, one way or another, to get a hold of this. I sure am certainly happy that I did finally get a hold of it, thanks to my buddy Kevin. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.